Joined now by former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Frank Corrado. Frank, thanks for joining us on a Friday. Typically Wednesdays with Frank, but thank you for
No,
moving dates today.
it's all good. We're going to finish the week strong. I know everyone's excited for the weekend. Back-to-back games for the Canucks. Doesn't get much better to start the weekend.
No, it doesn't. And well, we're asking our Bodog poll question: which day would you prefer to attend games? Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon for a player?
Mm-hmm.
Did Saturday night with your generation of guys, did that still mean more than other nights? Did a hockey night game get you more up, or was there a different buzz in the room on Saturday night?
It's the buzz, and I found that to be the case in Vancouver and Toronto. Like we kind of know the way it's two of the biggest markets and gets a lot of attention. But Saturday night is different, and I think it starts at morning skate. There's a few more cameras around. There's a few more people around. With it being a Saturday, I think a lot of people who maybe live further away from the arena, as far as media members, like they're willing to come in for morning skates. So it just feels like there's more of a group gathering. And listen, for a kid that grew up in Canada, playing on Saturday night really means something. And I just thought it was so cool. Seeing the logo around the arena, the towels for intermission, all that kind of stuff. But I will say now that I'm retired and I watch hockey for a living, we could use a few more Friday games. Like I find I finish the week of, whatever. Everyone's got their own week going on. It's Friday night, and it's like there's one game or two games on the schedule. And I kind of get it because a lot of teams want to play the Saturday night game. I'm sure it's great for the gate and great for viewership, all that kind of stuff. And that means if teams play Friday, they're probably going to play Saturday. So they don't want to have the back-to-back like the Canucks have tonight. But there's got to be a way we can get a few more Friday night games in. I don't know. I just feel like there's nothing to do. Like if you sit around and you're not going out, you put on TV, you're like, there's nothing on TV. There's no games on. I watched 3 Washington Capitals games in the last week. I can't do it anymore. I cannot do it with the Capitals anymore.
Well, we were saying in the opening segment, like it's a little less corporate perhaps on Saturday because you don't have the guys coming straight out of the office going to the games and taking clients and that sort of thing. Maybe you get more hockey fans too. Maybe that's it.
I could see that for sure. I'll buy that argument. And like things like opening night, I find are very, very corporate because who has the most seniority, within the company, whatever the big sponsors are, is like, CFO's got the tickets or CEO's got the tickets, and then as the season goes on, it kind of dwindles. But
the middle managers get tickets later on in the season, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like now it's Saturday night. It's not like you finish on Burrard, you go grab happy hour at Cactus Club, and then you go to the arena and watch the game. It's probably there is a little more. Let's say there's also a little more runway for people throughout the day to get the engines revved up before game time.
Very diplomatic, Senator Corrado. Well done. It's one of 2 Friday games all season for the Vancouver Canucks, November 24th. They're in Seattle. That's the only other Friday game on. I would say maybe it's in deference to junior hockey, which plays on Friday night, but I don't actually think that's the case. I don't think NHL operators think much of others and other leagues when they're crafting their schedule. Hughes and Hronek, buddy. Right now, the only pair in the National Hockey League at a certain level of ice time that has not given up a goal together. What have you made of these two together?
Do you remember, did you guys watch The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan thing, that documentary?
Oh, of course. Who didn't?
Do you remember the security guard that he kind of gambles with before the games? Yeah. And he goes like, that's how I feel. That's how I feel, Feel invigorated by this. I was talking about it last year a little bit, and I even talked myself out of it a little bit coming into the season. I'm like, I think the way things are going, Susie got hurt. You got to spread things around. I don't know if they're going to be able to survive if they put all this talent on one pair. Team's playing well, man. They're 4-2. They're ahead of the Oilers, ahead of the Flames, like doing well in the Pacific. And this pair has been really good. And I've kind of been paying attention to Canucks Twitter and what's going on out there. And I think a lot of people feel like Quinn Hughes has been slighted in the East with the media about his defensive game. And, if you watch the Canucks on a day-to-day basis, you kind of realize this guy is not only like elite offensively, elite with the puck. he's out there. Like, he's out there when they need a stop, when they need, when it's a critical time in the game. There's a lot of trust there. And Hronek, like, his ability to play with Hughes and not just have to defer everything for Hughes to do on the ice, I think that goes a long way. Like, he's not just dragging himself along. He's right there with Hughes. He adds another element to that D pair. And it's been great. Like, if you're Rick Tocchet, you can't wait to put those guys back on the ice. It's like, get them out there. No problem. I know I can trust them with the puck. I know they're responsible without the puck. And I think that's just always the number one thing when it comes to defensemen or D pairs. How much trust can you gain from your teammates, from your coach? And those guys have a ton of it right now.
Very different style from Nick Lidstrom, Quinn Hughes is. But is there a lesson to be learned there for Quinn to look at a guy that didn't have to use size and physicality to be strong defensively? Very few, elite defensemen didn't have size going for them as well, but Nick Lidstrom never needed to use that per se.
Yeah. You know what? It was funny. I was having this talk with someone yesterday, and we were talking about football, and the comparison came up between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And the point was that Patrick Mahomes, he has the razzle dazzle in his game, and we see that, right? And Josh Allen, it's like he wants to do that way too much. And the difference between guys like that is there's one guy who does the simple things like savagely well. And that's the base. And they always do that. And then they throw in a little sprinkle of the razzle dazzle from time to time. But that's what you remember, because you remember that highlight reel. But you don't remember the whole foundation of the game previous to that, where it was like just very strong, very within their means, like very foundational kind of stuff. And I think with Quinn Hughes, he kind of falls under that, where, we see the spin off, we see the spinorama, we see him, bring the puck up the ice with so much speed, so much conviction. But the one that really sticks out for you is that highlight reel play at the end of the night. We don't realize this guy did so many simple things really, really well, and it kind of goes unnoticed. And Lidstrom was like that. Like, Lidstrom was 100% like that. And, you play defense in the NHL, there's a certain amount of physicality that you probably need to have. But if you can make up for it with your skating, no one really gets on the wrong side of you. If you can make up for it with your stick, like, you disrupt a lot of things, you have room. Like, you have room in the budget as far as your six-man decor for a couple guys that do those simple things with the puck, like we talked about, really well. And they just do enough. They do enough on the other side of the puck where it's like, yeah, that guy doesn't need to run around. That's not his job. But at the end of the night, puck's not going in his net because he either has the puck a lot or he disrupted it enough on the way there. And like, Quinn Hughes does the simple things very, very well and just sprinkles a little razzle dazzle.
Well, and what I love about it, Frank, is after that Canadian division year where he was not very good defensively and admitted such and said he was embarrassed by it and said he was going to go change it, is, if you watch that season, there were a number of instances where just the physics of 5'10", 180 cost him. And now he just doesn't seem to get in the situations where the physics of 5'10",
right,
180,
which is Lidstrom as well, and Chris Tanevi a little bit.
Let's also point out something with where the Canucks are at. Defensemen are going to look very good when their goaltenders make saves, and Thatcher Demko has been outstanding. I think Casey DeSmith in the games he played, it's been very good. Like, think about what they were thinking of going into the season where, it was going to be maybe Spencer Martin, weren't sure, Archer Seelovs. Now they have a legit number 2 in DeSmith playing behind Thatcher Demko. Both those guys have been outstanding. And you know what that does? Like, it just buys your team a little bit of time within the game, right, in a 60-minute span to say, okay, I made the save for you. Now the star players, you can get your wheels under you. You can get going. Or like we saw in Nashville, it's kind of like that second tier of guy, whether it's Mikheyev or Di Giuseppe scoring goals. Like, it just buys you time throughout the game and throughout the season when you get a save for other guys to get on the board. And you're like, perfect. Like, we just needed that. And now everyone looks good because the D-men aren't, in the video room. We're not pulling clips of guys getting burned because the puck's not going in the back of the net. All is good. So, I mean, if you kind of ask me, like, it's both. You know what I mean? Like, Quinn Hughes is playing great. Hronek's playing great. It's nice to have great goaltending behind you, and the Canucks have that.
Now on to Hronek, Frank, because here's the one concern. Some would say there's a greater game afoot. He has been marvelous beside Hughes. A lot of guys can be marvelous beside Hughes, or at least look good. They've got to re-sign him after this year. He's, needless to say, already an expensive player who's going to get more expensive. RFA, not UFA, but nevertheless, is going to get a pay bump. You have to see him anchor his own pair before you pay him. No?
I think that's a fair statement, right? And especially, I think it's also fair because if you think this team is going to not only make the playoffs, because we know that's a goal of this team, but ultimately there's a longer term goal. This team wants to compete. It can't just be for the next 10 years. Yeah, we're just trying to make the playoffs. Like at some point you have to turn the corner and say, we're trying to compete. Like we're legit this year. For that to be the case, Philip Hronek will have to be one of those guys, because you're going to have to fill out a roster and he's going to make a lot of money, or, more money than he's making now. You would like to say, okay, you did great with Hughes. We know what that looks like. Can you turn our second pair into something where it's now we're really strong with a top four. We throw you over the boards. We don't have any issues with trust and whoever you're playing with, just like you talk about with Hughes. Luke Shen looked good with Hughes. Chris Tanev, as we all know, looked outstanding. Tyler Myers, listen, I'm not going to get into Tyler Myers unsolicited. We know kind of where that stands in the marketplace, but there's been times where, Quinn Hughes can bring Tyler Myers along, although it's not like a long-term solution. What I'm trying to say is, Hronek, if you're going to make, I don't know what the number would be right now. I haven't really delved into it very much. If it's $6 million, whatever. If that's the case, then you can't just be the auxiliary piece. Like you have to be the headline piece on that pairing at some point. So I would imagine at some point in the season, the way things go, injuries happen, guys aren't playing well. There's going to be an opportunity that presents itself where it's like, show us what you got. Show us what you got. I don't know who the player would be, whether he's playing with Cole or he's playing with Susie, whatever, but show us what you got as far as headlining your own pair.
There's a different school of thought to where this team is at. Last year, so dreadful out of the gate, 0-5-2. A chance to have 5 wins instead of 5 losses at the 7-game mark would represent a profound turnaround, but that's only within that own scale. Doesn't necessarily mean you've launched and are ready to contend. But of course, everybody around them looks like a disaster right now in the Western Conference, and in particular in the Pacific Division. Now, I doubt the players are looking at that and taking a whole lot of wind underneath their wings because it's far too early for that. But us on the sidelines, we can certainly point it out and say, wow, not only are they just better in relation to themselves, but in relation to the other people that we thought they'd have to compete with. This is a huge head start here, Frank. Do you think it's gone, and I don't mean gone to the players' heads in terms of they're overconfident, but do you think it's so marked that they can't help but notice it?
For sure. Like when Edmonton is near the bottom of the division, how do you not notice that? And the fact that they're not even scoring goals, like they get shut out like last night, they're letting in 7 to Minnesota. Like I'm trying to picture what the conversation would be like. If you walk into the dressing room, the standings are up every day, so you know who's where. And there's going to be conversations with the guys that are a little more into hockey. And they'll be looking at the Oilers and saying, yeah, I'm surprised, but those guys will find a way. They'll turn it around. The Flames, I have a feeling guys would be looking at that being like, dude, that's what I thought they were last year. And they didn't make any changes, and they're the exact same team. I actually had to do a little research into this the other day. I was doing SportsCenter. And it was like, what's ailing the Alberta teams? And it was funny looking into it. The slot area in and around the front of the net is the sticking point for both teams. For the Oilers, defensively, it's a disaster. Now, their goaltending hasn't been good, but they are giving up so many chances from the slot area. They are dead last or second to last in that area. And the crazy thing is, as far as shot attempts go, they're actually quite good at suppressing shot attempts. So that tells me that the attempts they're giving up are prime locations. So it's crazy how easily teams are getting to the front of the net for them, and their D-zone coverage like if I'm Jay Woodcroft, I can't wait to go back to like my old D-zone coverage. I know they changed it this year. It's not going well. I think that is more fixable than what's going on in Calgary, because Calgary is the same issue as last year, where they actually generate a decent amount of shots on net. They generate a decent amount of shot attempts, but they get next to nothing in and around the front of the net. So the slot area offensively has been a huge issue for Calgary. The defensive side of the puck is more teachable than the offensive side of the puck. Like the offensive guys are gifted. They call them, they're gifted for a reason. You can teach defense. Like coaches can coach you and teach you that kind of stuff. If you don't have it offensively, you just flat out don't have it. And I'd be a little more worried if I'm the Calgary Flames, but I'd be pumped if I'm the Vancouver Canucks. Because,
the brass tacks of it is that the more you separate now, I mean, you've got a get out of jail free card of a 4-game losing streak that doesn't cost you your spot. Like it's just math at this point.
It's great. Take full advantage of this while it's happening, because I don't think I just can't see the Oilers being this bad for that long. I can see Calgary being exactly what they are. This is not a small sample size with them. And how about Zadorov calling out his teammates, just calling them all selfish individuals? Like, listen, that's the kind of stuff that maybe you'd like it to stay in the room, but who knows how many times that conversation has happened in the room. And now he's like, you know what? Screw these guys. Like, I'm just saying it. But that now is the thing. It's like everyone's watching him. It's like, hey, did you miss your check there? You didn't get the puck out there? Like, what's up with that? So you might put a little bit of a little target on your back internally.
Zadorov, with what he said about his teammates and Russia this year, I mean, he's Michael Corleone, Godfather too. He's settling all accounts here. Nikita Zadorov.
Yeah. And you see the Husker quote too. If you're waiting for Huberdeau or Kadri to win you the game, you'll be waiting for the rest of the season. Like, you know, there's
$10.5 million a year. You should be able to win your team a few games.
One would think, but you know, you pay a winger on a career year. You know, with
they were
a lot of contact.
They were desperate.
Yeah.
Speaking of offensively gifted, I was just looking up the 2008-2009 Vaughan Kings U16 AAA minor midget program.
Oh, it's a fabulous program. It's churned out the pros.
Well, how about 4 NHLers on a U16 team, including our guy here who led them in scoring, 15 points clear of a fellow named Phil Di Giuseppe.
Hey. Really cheap.
And
great response.
First of all, the number of Italian names on this team is striking. So is the fact Corrado, Di Giuseppe, Ryan Spruill, who played some games with Detroit and the Rangers, and Jordan Binnington in goal. So you've known Phil for a long time.
Long time. Oh yeah. Yeah.
As a friend, as someone who's known him a long time, how do you feel for him? I mean, have you had a chance to catch up with him here since he's turned into a cult hero in Vancouver, skating second line with Boeser and Miller?
So, yeah, we've known each other for a long time. We played minor hockey. We had a couple summers where we happened to train at the same facility. So we've known each other from there. I'll tell you what, man, I've been a big fan of him, like just as a person, as a player for a long time. And I am so happy for him and his family. Like, it's not often you see a guy really grind it out in the minors as a tweener guy and then make it to the NHL at 30 years old. And he's done great. And all he's done his whole career is just work his nuts off. I don't know if we're allowed to say that on this program, but that's what he does. That's what he does. And he had a lot of skill at a young age. He was always one of the better players in our age group. You could always see that he had that mind for the net. And at times when we were younger, he was really small. And he grew like that junior kind of age because he decided to go to Michigan. He was drafted by Niagara. He was never going to go there. I think he was a smaller guy at the time. He grew in like 2-3 years and just turned into like a man, and then went to Michigan and like almost resurfaced from there. And I remember guys like in our area talking, like Di Giuseppe's doing great at Michigan, and we're all really happy for him because we knew he had the mind for it. We knew he had the game for it, but he was a smaller, little more slender guy. I'm so happy for him because he comes by it honestly. He's worked incredibly hard his whole career, and here he is now. I love it. I love that he's in Vancouver. He's doing great, and I think Rick Tocchet is a great coach for him because he will appreciate the kind of effort that a guy like that puts in and day out. There's a guy who will never take a day for granted in the NHL. And I think that shows in the way he plays the game.
Yeah, all summer long when we were sketching out forward lines for the Vancouver Canucks, those that were without Di Giuseppe, the first thing I said was put Di Giuseppe in there. I didn't see him in the top 6 because you knew Tocchet loved him some Phil Di Giuseppe. And then the other thing, Frank, and, we've talked a little bit about this week is, it's obviously not the same story. Alex Burrows, which was a much bigger underdog, undrafted, coming from the ECHL, but he found his niche doing the spade work for offensively gifted teammates. And Phil is doing all the spade work for Miller and Boeser, even when he doesn't get on the stats sheet or even when he doesn't get in on the goal with the second assist. You're finding Phil doing good things that help lead to the goal. So the unselfishness is commendable on top of the late bloomer story.
That's what we do, man. Von Kings, you know what I mean? Like we have a certain culture. You talk about teams in programs, whether it's the New England Patriots, the Boston Bruins, Von Kings under 16 program. There's just a certain way we operate and we do things, and we churn out good athletes, guys, but we turn out good people, and that's first and foremost.
We were saying yesterday too, his hockey card is an interesting one. Like, you don't see a guy with 8 seasons of 30 NHL games. Like, usually the NHL decides for you after 3 or 4 of those seasons, you're either in or you're out. And he just keeps on grinding out and getting to 30 odd games, but never beyond. I think he might get beyond this year. Speaking of your junior hockey days, you cross paths with a couple of newsmakers this week. Well, one newsmaker, one guy who gets latched onto it. Zach Kassian retires this week. And you cross paths with him in the Canucks organization. You played against the guy that left the organization in that trade, and Cody Hodgson. You got embroiled. You have tentacles all over this news event.
Yeah, you know what? I remember playing against Cody Hodgson my first year in the OHL. And that year, like, Windsor was really good. They had Taylor Hall and Ryan Ellis, and Cody Hodgson played in our division in Sudbury in the Eastern Conference. I remember after that season, people would ask me, like, who's the best player you played against that year? I'm pretty sure my answer a lot of times was Cody Hodgson. Like, he was outstanding. He was really good. And I think, like, the way he played at the World Juniors, like, he just became this, hype machine, this kind of like Canadian World Junior hero. It's really unfortunate. Like, we kind of know what happened with his career and the injuries and the back and all that kind of stuff. But man, he was the real deal. He was such a good player. And Kassian, like, you just look at that time, the LA Kings were having success playing a certain way. The Boston Bruins had success playing a certain way. And Vancouver wanted to kind of pivot. And it was a great opportunity for them to bring in a guy who was a first-round pick with some pedigree, who kind of had that, had that profile to his game. Man, Kassian's a funny guy, man. I had a lot of laughs hanging around him, for sure, whether it was on the plane or, at meals, around the dressing room. He could run hot, for sure. But there were a lot of times where, you leave a conversation with the cast man, you're like, man, that guy is such a beauty. What a funny, like, they don't build him like that anymore. And I don't know, like, I don't know if they're ever going to build him like that again. But you know what? Give Cass a lot of credit, because we know what he went through in his personal life. And, he's taken steps to kind of get on the other side of that. So good for him. All the power to him. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to share the same dressing room and same ice as Zach Kassian.
I was going to ask, Frank, did you know he was fighting stuff when he was here in Vancouver? Did you know there was some trouble?
I don't know if you could say that you knew there was trouble. You just kind of, you kind of see certain, I don't know if it's behaviors or whatever, but, people like to enjoy themselves, if you want to call it that. But I just, you're so kind of like invested in your own game, your own life. And, you see whatever, you just kind of like observe people.
It's
and
just
you're like,
snapshots.
So it's just, it's a little bit here, it's a little bit there. And that's kind of it. Like, I say this, like, there's a lot of things that can happen in a room or within a team. And you're like, I don't even know that happened unless someone told me, you know what I mean? So, but at the end of the day, he's done an unbelievable job of kind of rectifying whatever was ailing him in his life. And good for him. He was a pleasure to be around, even on the fiery days.
Yeah, and he went on to have some terrific seasons there after the incident in Montreal and after the trade to Edmonton. Marvelous stuff, Frank. Thank you for this. Have a great weekend. We'll catch up Wednesday.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy the back-to-back Jacks.
This Sekeres and Price clip brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. And remember,
it's all good at Applewood.